Tjena läget grabben. Välkommen till the svenska tanklinjen. And yes, hello and welcome to the Swedish tank line. Armored Pants here. And we're going to have a look firstly at the Tier 6, the Strv 74, or Tank 74 as it translates in Swedish. We're going to have a look at the tech spec as always. We're going to have a look at blitzhanger.com to do that. I've played all of the tanks up to the Tier 10 now. It's a good tank line, I have to say. Definitely worth the grind, and if you guys are starting it, you won't be disappointed, and a lot of variety on the way as well. So, but before we go on to the tech spec, let's incorporate a Swedish expert to help us look at this. So it's the Stridsvagen, which basically just means tank in Swedish, so it's Tank 74. It follows on from the Stridsvagen M40 and M42. The M40 was a Second World War tank. The M42 developed after the Second World War. These tanks actually existed. They also were used by other European armies, which is why the European flag, I guess, is over the line, if you're wondering about that, even though they're Swedish tanks. Made by Landsverk, and the M42 was made primarily for the Hungarian army. The 74 that we're going to look at now was developed using the old chassis, but they developed a new turret for it, and on that turret there was a high velocity 75mm gun system, and this is actually reflected in Blitz because the gun handling and the muzzle velocity in this tank is very good, and we're going to have a look at that when we look at the tech spec. It also, unusually for many tanks, had a petrol engine, right? So it has two Scania petrol engines, both delivering 170 horsepower, and it only weighed 26 tons. So therefore I was quite agile and quite mobile, and this is also reflected in Blitz, and we'll have a look at that too when we are looking at the tech spec. Now you're going to move from mediums to heavies along this line, so Tier 8, 9, 10 are heavies, and there's three different types of gun systems too, right? Standard single shell gun system on Tier 6 and 7, moving on to auto loaders and then auto reloaders. I'm going to have a look at all of those and have mini tutorials on those as we go through this journey together, so that we don't end up a cropper like the Swedish chef here with an axe in the fucking head. Schist. Okay. So let's move on to the tech spec. So when setting up this tank, I would run cheese board, improved fuel, and cinnamon roll. That maxes out the performance, that's view range, rate of fire, etc. There are two 75mm guns, we said. So I would get the gun last because you can live with the first 75mm gun for a while. And also, this tank is really about going hull down, etc. because the gun depression, so get that turret first. Now, in terms of the gun, you get 148mm of pen with AP, 200mm with APCR, going up to 155 and 210 if you use calibrated shells, 38mm of pen with HE, going up to 42mm if you use calibrated shells. Reload is 5 seconds with gun rammer, 5.5 seconds with calibrated shells, and you get low alpha rolls, right? It's only 160 plus, so you need to be aware of that. For Tier 6, and especially if you're up tiered, that's pretty low alpha roll, right? So that's one of the drawbacks of the tank. It is a good tank. It does have some drawbacks though when we look at those. Now, the gun index is 12.5, right, which is really good. So the gun handling is brilliant, and the mobility index is 6. So also very good for Tier 6, right? And that reflects the historic sort of attributes of this tank. If you're unsure what the gun index and the mobility index are, there's videos about it in the Advanced Blitz guide here on channel. Muzzle velocity is 1203 meters per second, which is very good for Tier 6. That's of course if you use supercharge, which I recommend you do. And then I would also recommend vertical stabilizer, and gun rammer and calibrated shells both work. It depends on your preference. Coming back to the gun index, mobility index, basically these are one figure that we created using a formula that allows you to compare tanks on like for like basis, and basically it uses key parameters of a gun system and of a tank's mobility. So and they're very good in here. Why? Well, one of the things is the power to weight ratio is very good. It also has traverse is good, which makes this tank a good brawler, particularly when you consider that fast reload, right? So this tank is good if you're one-on-one, particularly if you're not up-tiered. Now, one of the drawbacks is concealment. For a tank that has 296 view range, it will spot you up within 237 meters, and if you're moving, that goes out to 250 meters. So this is not really very good at all, and your own view range is only 264, so you're going to get spotted up before other tanks a lot on the map, which means you need to be careful if you're using this as a scouting or spotting vehicle. Now, in terms of the armor, profile, well, it's a medium tank, right, so you don't expect too much armor. But if you look at the profile here, we'll see that it's very narrow, it's quite small, and it's a difficult target to hit. It has this strong turret. A gun mantlet takes up a lot of it, so if you want to fire either side of the gun mantlet, it's a small target, easy to miss. 10 degrees of gun depression, as we discussed, which basically means that this tank is very, very good at hold down, which is why I recommended that you get the turret first. But going hold down is one of its key strengths. It does, however, have that very elongated, almost alien-like head on the turret, right? So when you turn to the side, if you're going hold down, you present a big target, so be aware of that. Swivel when you're going over a hill, popping up to go to hold down as little as possible, because you do present a lightly armored and very long target, much like Giger's alien from the movie. So just be careful about that. Now, as I said, in terms of tactics, I would, this tank is excellent to hold down, it's excellent at brawling, and that's sort of where you're going to get the most play out of this tank. And the gun system is excellent, and we're going to have a look at that in the gameplay, right? So we're starting here on Middleburg. For those of you who haven't seen my videos before, I'm going to do something I always do if I start up top on Middleburg. On this side of the map, there's an advantage on this side of the map that there isn't on the other side, which basically allows you to get into a spotting and sniping position early on the map to spot up the enemy and to get a shot into them. So basically there's a sort of a gully here on the right hand side of the map which you can power up into. Gives you some protection for the hull of your tank. Get up, spot, and then oftentimes you get a shot on like this one. And just going to have a look at that again. Just look at this gun handling. So really, really good. The smallest of targets. We're actually firing into the Leo, which is the tank after this tier 7 medium in this Swedish European line. And you saw there, smallest of targets, the tank delivers. You know, so it's a very good gun system on this. The muzzle velocity, gun handling, everything is excellent, which gives us this 12.5 K gun index. So very, very good. And you'll see a couple of other examples of that in this game. Also, you know, the penetration is not bad. Again, looking here at the gun handling, small target, far away, only a millisecond to aim and fire. The system delivers for us. So 2 examples there of the gun handling in action, and it does have good gun handling for sure. You can also see it's pretty mobile. I mean, it's obviously not like a VK28 or something like that, but it has decent mobility, and that reflects the historical sort of attributes of the tank with those twin Scania benzene or petrol engines. You can see here as I'm moving forward onto this target, you know, it's pretty agile, pretty mobile. So I'm coming into position to brawl with him, and I just pause it there because that's not what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting fucking IS-2 to be there. I mean, what is he doing there? I mean, it's a strange place to be at that point in the game, right? But that's not good for me, so I get smashed by both of them. But you can see I'm able to get around behind the IS-2, get around behind my compatriot, put another round into him. I probably should have kept going here, but I actually thought I might be able to use the hill to cover myself. That was not correct. I got smashed up the butt there. A nice Frodo round, like a little hobbit. Just had my ring destroyed. I want to slow it down here though, you know, just front onto the IS-2 and just use normal AP. I'm able to pen him front on. So again, good gun system in this tank, and I would have taken him out, but my allies come along and helped me out. This game is now over, so just a few simple shots here. I'm going to go in close on the AT. I'm going to switch up to APCR just because I want to make sure I pen, get some extra damage. I think I finished top with damage in this game. So just a good example of some of the characteristics of this tank in this game. I sort of snap one off here, but I'm probably never going to make that shot. And you know, a good example of the characteristics of this tank, which is basically you know, its mobility. You can see here it is pretty mobile. Its gun handling. And you know, we didn't see it so much in this game, but if you get an opportunity on a map to go hold down, this tank will deliver time and time again. Its drawbacks, of course, are this low alpha roll. It does really have a low alpha roll, particularly when you're up tiered. You're going to struggle trying to do a lot of damage. But it does have that decent reload, which somewhat compensates. And you know, having decent reload is always good because you can fire tactical shots, for example, to track an enemy. It doesn't really matter then if you do damage or not, as long as you track them, because you're going to reload it very quickly, right? And you know, I think that you can always influence a game far more if you fire more often, right? And that's certainly something you can do with this tank. Now we'll have a look at some more gameplay in a second, where I want to show you again the mobility, its ability to circle of death, etc. But one thing I want to point out to you guys about grinding this line, right? You are going to come across more and more players of higher caliber and higher skill levels than you normally do at tier 6, especially because you've got many players who want to get the tier 9 and tier 10 tanks in this line, and they're coming down to grind, right? So firstly, you're going to see this a lot, right? You know, 6, sometimes even 7 of the same tank in a game, because everybody's grinding the same line right now, which in a way makes it a bit easier because everybody's playing with the same tank, right? So nobody has a significant advantage. But you know, you're going to be finding players who normally play at tier 9, tier 10, so the best players in the game are down because they're grinding this line as well, right? And that, of course, then is a bit of a problem, right? Because if you normally play this level and you're comfortable and doing well there, you're now going to find yourself up against a lot more players of a higher skill level, and they're bringing those tier 9, tier 10 skills down. And you may find that, you know, say brawls or face-to-face, again, you see just an example there of the good gun system, but also the strength of that turret. He hit the mantlet there, so it bounced off. Again, this M6 is going to come after me, but with the mobility of the tank, I'm easily able to get away from him. Not much happens in this game. You know, I just wanted to show you this game as an illustration of, you know, how you can get some bounces in this tank. You know, so you saw there on the angle of the front armor, because it has a little bit of armor on the front of the tank. Bounce off the turret because the mantlet is such a big part of the turret when it's front on. And you can see here, I'm just looking to see if I can get a shot on, help my allies. And but as I was saying before, you're gonna come across a lot more. Again, another bounce off the mantlet. The mantlet is really strong, you know, and it just can't be penned. Now here's what I was talking about the size of the turret when you go side, when you turn it. See, I had such a big target there on my pier on the other Strv. And this is something you need to be aware of, right? So you turn that turret, you present this huge elongated target to the enemy, and just like that guy there, you get smashed. So that's exactly an in-game illustration of what we were talking about during the tech spec. Going back to the player caliber, just be aware of that, guys, and don't be disappointed if, you know, you're not doing as well as you normally do, because there really is a huge overpopulation of really good players now down at tier 6 and tier 7, because they're grinding this line as well. Players that you wouldn't normally find on there. I want to show you this because it's a good example of the mobility of this tank. You see it's easily able to circle at death the M6 there. So, some good illustrations of the key points and strengths of this tank in action. Now let's have a look at it in a recap. So this is a very decent medium tank. It's not amazing, of course. There's nothing hugely special about it, but it is good. By the way, the T25 there is just there as an illustrative sort of icon. It doesn't mean anything. It's not related to T25 or anything, just in case, because I know there's some very pedantic people out there. Has good gun handling, great gun index. It does 50 kilometers per hour, decent power to weight ratio. Power to weight ratio is really good. Has good traverse, good reload, so therefore it's a decent brawler. You know, but it also has that 10 degrees of gun depression, so you know, it's really good at going hull down. Poor alpha, only 160 plus damage points, so you know, it's quite low. Poor concealment numbers, so be very careful about that, because I know a lot of you will play medium tank as a spotting vehicle, but with its view range and its concealment numbers, you will get spotted up early and fast in it. So just be careful. You can't go balls out in this to spot and scout. You will get spotted up. But overall, this is a decent playable tank. It's a good start to a new line. You'll enjoy playing this tank and you'll enjoy the whole line. Music, by the way, was Franz Berwald, who is my favourite Swedish composer. It's his violin concerto, and we're actually going to use some Swedish compositions during the whole line of videos we go through. So cheers, Mush. Thanks for watching. I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it enjoyable. And I guess all that remains for me to say is pants off.